Hello, everybody. This is Eric from AD Racing Central. I'm here today with Brandon Anderson, a game developer from Whatnot Games. Welcome, Brandon, to the channel.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's bright and sunny in LA.
Oh, yeah. Sounds it's usually that during most days of the year, I hear.
Yeah.
And you are a game developer, and would you just briefly tell the audience about the game you're developing, what type of game it is, and what it's called?
Yeah. So I'm developing Star Racer, and it is a zero gravity sci-fi combat racer with like a very heavy emphasis on kind of retro themes. So it's got a lot of like pixel art stuff. It's got some kind of D-made music using kind of SNES sort of sounds, and yeah, it's main inspirations. I think it's a big open secret are Star Fox and F-Zero, kind of combining the two with the racing and some of the aerial combat.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense after watching the gameplay trailers and playing the demo. And we are, of course, going to talk more about Star Racer. I just wanted to hear a bit more about your background. Maybe we could start with your background as a gamer. Did you grow up playing video games every day from you were 7? Or
Yeah. Since I think probably before I was 7. Gosh, I think like my very first game. Well, one of my first gaming experience was actually with F-Zero. I remember I was on some family trip. I can't remember where to. It might have been Hawaii or something. It was like one of those like huge. The whole family gets together and goes on a vacation together, and I was in a hotel room with my cousin, and they had a Super Nintendo in the TV or attached to the TV, and one of the games was F-Zero, and we just spent all night playing it, and it was just super fun. So that was kind of my first like gaming experience, and I played games forever since then. I mean, like I'm a huge RPG fan. Like I remember playing Final Fantasy VII for hundreds of hours when I was like 7 or 8 years old or something like that. And then just like we always had games growing up. We had I started with the Super Nintendo, but then we had the N64, which was my main childhood memories with like Mario 64, Zelda, stuff like that. And then we had the PlayStation, PS2, GameCube, all those kinds of things.
Oh, I see. So you played a lot of different video games, it seems like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So now you're developing a racing game. Did racing games have a special part in your life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I told you, one of my first games was F-Zero, but apart from that, I mean, Mario Kart was always around, when I was growing up, and I would play everyone at Mario Kart. It was just one of my favorite racing games. And then in the PlayStation era, so like I said, I was a huge Final Fantasy VII fan, and my stepmom actually would get mad at me because I would keep like ruining her save files. I mean, she could make more, so I think she had like a separate memory card, but like I would keep like messing up her save files because I would go back to the gold saucer in FF7 and do the Chocobo racing mini game like over and over and over again, and all I cared about was that. And so eventually the Chocobo racing PS1 game came out, and she bought that for me, being like, here, play this instead of FF7, and then you can do whatever you want. And that became one of my favorite games of all time as well. So one of my favorite kart racers is Chocobo Racing, and I just loved like the story and how it used all the Final Fantasy characters, and it was just like super cute and super fun, and actually has some mechanics that like I still haven't seen to this day, like the materia stacking and how you can get 3 of one power to make it more powerful and stuff. I just thought that was like super clever, and then the other thing I loved was when you beat the story mode, you could customize your racer and all that. So those are kind of like my favorite racing games growing up. I never got into like the more hardcore like Forza or was it Gran Turismo? My cousin got into those, but I was always more interested in like the more fantasy style racing.
Yeah, it makes sense, judging by the game you're developing right now.
Yeah.
And you mentioned F-Zero being maybe an obvious inspiration. Did you follow the F-Zero franchise through the years up to GX and so on, and played all those games?
Yes, I played every F-Zero game, and I played. I think I found an F-Zero AX arcade machine once. I think they had one at a movie theater when I was like a teenager, and so I was like I went home and like got my memory card and loaded it up, and it was just super fun. So like
okay.
I only found it once though, which is disappointing. I've heard that they have them in Vegas, so next time I go to Vegas, I might be on the lookout for one. But yeah, I was obsessed with F-Zero GX when it came out. I think F-Zero X was a little much for me at the age I was when it came out. I was kind of more interested in like Super Mario or Banjo-Kazooie or things like that. But by the time I got to GameCube and F-Zero GX came out, I played that constantly.
Yeah, and that game is mentioned a lot when you talk about anti-gravity racing games.
Yeah.
It's a very influential game for sure.
Oh yeah.
And then you got into game development for some reason. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, so I don't know how. Well, okay, so growing up, my cousin was a programmer, and so he was always doing like programming projects and making like little games and like Unity and stuff like that. And so he taught me how to program. Not super early. I actually only started learning programming, when I was 18. And he was teaching me, and the reason I wanted to learn it was because I was actually mostly interested in music, and I wanted to learn how to implement music into games. I knew I wanted to do music, and I knew I wanted to do games, and so I kind of found out about the possibility of being a video game composer. And so I had done piano and music lessons and all of that growing up as well. So I started writing music, started learning how to program, and then kind of combined that those two skill sets together into what's called technical sound design, which is where sometimes you make the sounds by like taking recordings and stuff and editing them, but then you also need to put them into the game engine. And sometimes you can use middleware to do that, or sometimes you have to actually program parts of the game engine to be able to play back the sounds. So I learned how to do that, and it just kind of all went from there. I just was like, this is really fun. I love programming. And after probably a couple years of doing just audio stuff and doing tech sound design, I started feeling like, maybe I could like make my own little game in Unity. And so my cousin kind of showed me how to use Unity. I remember this is back in the Skype days.
I see.
Yeah, we would stay up like all night on Skype, and he'd be like sharing his screen, and I'd be like, well, what if you did this and this, and then we would make little games in Unity together. And I still have some of the old prototypes. Like I think we had one where you have like a hang glider with rockets on it and stuff like that, and like you had a grappling, all these like really fun little test projects. And so eventually I was like, all right, now I'm gonna do it on my own. And the first game I made on my own was, I think, it was called I did this like game jam for Thanksgiving one year, and the game we made was Turkey Ping Pong or Turkey Pong. So it was like literally I took a sphere in Unity and I just put like feathers on it and a turkey head on it and then I just had the players running back and forth like hitting it to each other.
So Turkey Ping Pong is exactly what it sounds like.
Exactly. And then I think when you got the high score and beat your opponent, the turkey would explode into a bunch of feathers. It was just like super silly. And then another one I did actually with my cousin, and this was another game jam, was when they were, you remember when they were digging up the E.T. cartridges in New Mexico a couple years ago? So it was kind of a big deal. I remember like the Angry Video Game Nerd went out to New Mexico to be involved in it or something, and Because like the story about that is that ET for the Atari was so bad that it was cheaper for them to literally just bury all of the cartridges in the desert than to keep them on store shelves and sell them.
Okay.
So there were like hundreds and hundreds of, or maybe even thousands, I don't remember, of ET cartridges buried in the desert in New Mexico, and so they dug those up one year, and I thought that was just so funny, and so we made a little game jam game where it's literally there's just a hole in the ground, the ET cartridge is at the bottom of the hole, and then there's a bunch of rocks on top, and you can just control an ET hand to pick up the rocks and move them, and then when you get to the bottom, then you get the cartridge, and then you can put it in the Atari, and then the Atari was attached to a TV, and the screen would turn on, and then it would just say error because the cartridge was too damaged. It was just like a silly little thing. But so those were like my first what if I had this crazy idea and we made it into this just silly little thing. So from there, I just was kind of couldn't stop thinking about making games, and so I couldn't not. So I just kept doing it and had more and more projects until eventually here I am about to release into early access this game, and it's been a wild ride. I think it's been since I started programming about 12 years, 12 or 13 years, something like that.
Yeah, I see. It must be a special feeling to finally see your own game there on Steam, ready for early access.
It's weird. I'll say that it's so like it is really nice. Don't get me wrong, but I think it hasn't fully hit me yet because I've been so like in it, like just focused on developing this thing and like trying to deal with the stress that comes with developing something, especially when you're trying to do it under a time crunch, even though like it's a self-imposed time crunch. It's still it's very stressful sometimes. So like I think that maybe once the game is like in early access and it's kind of quote unquote the first version, like version 1.0, maybe I'll be able to take a break and relax and not think about it for a week or two, and then maybe it'll hit me how like incredible this is, because it is incredible. Like I never kind of even really imagined I'd be here. I thought maybe at one point I would, but like it's been a very interesting experience for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Looking forward to the future of how everything will with Star Racer. And it's time we start to talk a bit about Star Racer. How did that particular game come into existence?
Yeah, so I actually spent the last 6 years making a completely different game. And that was like I said earlier, I love RPGs, and one of my favorites was actually Final Fantasy Tactics. And so I was like, I want to make a tactics RPG, and I spent literally 6 years developing just a demo of this game, and I still love the game. I'm gonna revisit it after Star Racer, but it was just too big for me to do on my own, and especially since no one had heard of me before, and I was having some issues trying to like find publishers or investors, because it was going to need a lot of money to make it correctly, I think. And so I was like, well, it probably isn't in the cards right this second to keep pursuing this, because I will probably end up spending way too much money and nothing really will get done. So instead, I wanted to try a smaller project, something that was a bit more manageable, that didn't have 150 different systems that are interconnected. And so I put the game down and was like, let me just go kind of play a couple games from my retro games library. I'm a retro game collector. Okay. And so I have like the original F-Zero cartridge and all of that. And so I was like playing a couple different games, and I'm like, I kept playing F-Zero just for fun because I was like, this is just really fun. I remember it being one of my favorite games growing up, and I've never gotten the same feelings from another game. Like even like F-Zero X or GX like didn't feel the same as the original F-Zero. So
it's hard to beat nostalgia.
It really is. But like, and I question too though about how much nostalgia it is and how much just like a good game it was. Because like there is something to be said, like the programmers who made these things were so talented, and they knew what they were doing. I mean, they had to figure it out for sure with new hardware, but like they knew how to make games. And so many games I see, like, you know, it's just a repetition of something that came before, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, like, people figured out what was really fun, and so you just kind of iterate on that and make it even more fun. So I kept playing F-Zero. I was like, this is really fun. And then at one point I started playing the original Star Fox, as well as the Star Fox N64. I was like, man, the flying is so fun. And I had I have the SNES Classic, and so it has Star Fox 2 on it. And so I was playing that, and I was like, this is like really cool. Like, I'm so bummed like that this never came out. So I just kept like coming back to these two games. I was like, what if I just kind of like mixed them together? Like, F-Zero is super fun. Star Fox is super fun. I love the flying. What if you could fly in the middle of an F-Zero race? Maybe that would be a fun thing to make a game out of. And so I made this prototype in like a week. I gave myself like 7 days to do it. Because I think I heard someone say somewhere that like for every week that it takes to make a prototype, it'll take that many years to make the full game. Okay. So it's like, I don't want to spend a ton of time making a game. I'm just going to spend a week making the prototype. If it's fun, then I'm going to make the game. And by the way, my philosophy for the types of games I want to make are like, I want to make more games, not fewer. So I want to make games that take less time to make, and so that, like, because it's like, how many days am I going to be on this earth? Not that many in the grand scheme of things. So like, do I want to spend my life making like 2 or 3 games? I certainly could. Or do I want to make like 10 or 20 games? I think I'd rather make 10 or 20 games. So I made this prototype in a week, and I was having so much fun by the end of that week. Like, I made a little bit of sprite art myself. I put it in the game. I took like a rip of the Mute City map from like F-Zero Game Rips or .com or something, and put that in the game. And then just like, I didn't have any collisions or anything. I was just like, literally had my vehicle on the F-Zero map, and I was driving around, and then I made it so you could fly, and I was just having a lot of fun with it. And I was like, okay, there's definitely something here. And then I was like, okay, well, I think I have enough money to make this, to hire some artists and to kind of do this, so let's do it. And yeah, I talked with my fiance about it, and she's like, yeah, this is fun, do it. And that's kind of how it started. And then it was mostly me, and then I brought in the artist that I was working with on the Tactics RPG. And I was like, hey, we're pausing the Tactics RPG from now. I want to do this other thing. And he was super cool about it. He was like, okay, how do we do that? Like, what do you want the art to look like? And we just like went through different iterations of how the vehicles could look and everything, and finally landed on what we did. And yeah, it was just kind of from there built up and up and up until now it's where it is.
Yeah, that's an interesting story about how it all started, what kicked things off with Star Racer. You talked about F-Zero being, and Star Fox being sort of the main inspirations. Mm-hmm. Was it any other game that you feel that was inspiration when you thought about it, like maybe Mario Kart or maybe another game entirely that was influential when developing Star Racer?
There were some influences in certain areas. For example, I loved the drift boosting mechanic in Mario Kart, so I am using that basically. And so it's like, oh well, that's not something you usually see in these F-Zero games. That'll maybe make it feel more fun and arcadey. And so there are little influences like that, but not any other big influences. I think the main thing I've been trying to stick to is original F-Zero mixed with Star Fox. Because like you do see these other games, which they're all fantastic. Like I saw Aero GPX and was it Death Grip?
Death Grip.
Yeah, and those are freaking awesome. Definitely more F-Zero X or GX inspired, which is totally cool. I think those are fantastic games. That's just not what I wanted to go for, and so that's when I kind of knew, all of these other F-Zero like games that come out are doing something a little different than what I'm trying to do, and so if they're serving that player base, like I think there's a similar player base, but also a want for this feel of the more classic F-Zero.
And when you start developing this game, this is a bit of a programming question, I guess. I mean, from a programming perspective, what is the starting point that everything sort of evolves from? Is it the physics when you drive? Is it the universe or the art style? Could you pinpoint something that everything sort of elaborates from?
Yeah, it definitely, for me at least, and I think every developer is going to be different. I know some people who the first thing they think about when they make a game is the world and how it all fits together, and I love that too. I would do worldcraft with my friends sometimes. Some of my friends who are into D&D, we would just spend hours talking about, okay, what about you had a world where this happened and this, and we've created some awesome worlds. But that's just not where I start in game development. I usually start with the gameplay and the physics, and well, in this case, the physics. Some games don't use physics at all, but this one does. So I knew I needed to start with how it felt to drive the vehicle, and so that was completely what the prototype was about. Was how does driving feel and how does flying feel? And then I think I had I made a sprite in an hour because I was like, I don't want to spend much time on this. So I made a vehicle sprite and then I just put it in the game. It was like, okay, now I have the sprite. I can see where the vehicle is. Now I'm going to, make it feel good to move it around. And then it's an iterative process from there. It's mostly focusing on the gameplay, but at some point it is okay, we do need to start thinking about the look of things, because visual appeal is extremely important. So that's kind of the secondary motivation. And then for me, in this game specifically, the world and the lore, it's not an afterthought, but it definitely came after everything else was kind of set in place. And then once you have something from all areas of that, then you kind of go back to one and focus on it more, and then you move on to the next thing and focus on that. And so it's an iterative process.
That's what I heard before, that the physics is a big part of a racing game.
Yeah,
and that's something that you have to nail before moving on to other things.
Yeah, I think probably for racing games more than any other game, I don't know, maybe platformers too. Physics and just the movement is the most. Because that's the point of the game, really. You're playing the game to move this vehicle around, not to look at vehicles, and not to necessarily, although some people can, to experience the lore.
But there is a bit of a lore to this game. Not something that is thrown in your face when you start up the demo or something like that. But you can tell by just looking at the ships, and each ship has a unique driver in this game.
Yep.
And the drawings of them, they show off a lot of personality. There has to be some kind of a story behind each picture. That's what I feel when I look at them, at least. They have a special part in this world.
Yeah, there's definitely a story, and also shout outs to my artist Maxim. Well, he's one of my artists. He does all the character art. He's a comic book artist, and he just did a fantastic job with all of these. Basically, what the process is I would come up with a character, and I would think about what kind of person this character is, or what kind of animal it is, whatever. And then think of just like a little short story of like that kind of shows like a snippet of their life, right? So like for example, the character Pippi is this cybernetic cat, and so the story that I gave Maxim for her was she's the leader of this like criminal organization, so she's like going into this underground casino, kind of speakeasy type thing, and she's playing poker, and then you can see that she's cheating. Like she has an extra ace up her sleeve, and so she's cheating to win, and then like she kind of gets caught, and then she's like grinning like, yeah, what are you gonna do about it, right? So that's kind of, it's just like this silly little story of like, what would this character be like in this universe? And the universe, I was like, well, it's obviously going to be futuristic. It's going to be like post-galactic expansion, if Earth explored multiple galaxies and colonized and found other alien species and stuff, and so the idea was really just like, there's going to be a lot of different characters and with different motivations and different backgrounds, and so I wasn't concerned about any like cohesion other than like they're within this world. So like each racer's gonna be very, very different, and very like some won't have anything to do with the others. There's not necessarily intertwining backstories between all of them or anything like that. You can kind of think of it as a bunch of different people and aliens and things coming together to just race, right? There are going to be some of them, I think, that are maybe interconnected a little bit. Like, for instance, Mona is one of the main characters, and she's a mechanic, and so one of the community characters that we made, which we actually had the community in the Discord submit ideas and make a poll about what kind of character they wanted to see in the game. So what came out of that was a Triceratops mechanic. So we have two mechanics in the game. So what we're probably going to do is they're going to be like rivals, and they're going to be like, oh, I can make a faster machine than you can, and stuff like that. So there'll be some like fun intertwining stories, but it's all really light. Like the way I think we're going to present it is that like when you win a Grand Prix with a character, we're going to show the comic art that my artist made for it, and play out that little story, and that's kind of the extent to how the story is going to be represented in the game. So again, it's not in your face, but it's there. Like for instance, one of the characters that we haven't really shown yet, but again, like these are like all just silly ideas, and the idea is that you can have a character from anywhere, from any walk of life. One of the characters is a robot that was built to be a fry cook, and so he owns a food truck, and there was a glitch in his programming, and so he decided that instead of selling food out of his food truck, he's gonna race it in these races. So it's like you can like just come up with like any wacky idea and be like, yeah, that probably works in this universe. Like, it's futuristic and anything goes kind of thing,
Yeah, I can see. The game gives up a bit of a goofy vibe. Yeah. Overall.
For sure.
There was something about in the early access release date trailer that it stated at the bottom that these are for Earth. Mm-hmm. Check out your local calendar. So.
Yeah, that has been something really fun. I've been working with Vicarious for marketing and PR, and the guys there just totally get the game. Like we had a meeting about the game, and they're like, we totally understand like what you're trying to do and the tone of everything that you want. Like, we love it. We are from that time period too. We have nostalgia for that kind of stuff, so we got this. And everything they've done has just been awesome. Like, I've barely had to give them any, like, they send me scripts and stuff of the videos that they're doing, and like this last round I haven't had any notes. It's just been like, this is hilarious and exactly the energy that I want, so let's do it.
Yeah, that must be a great feeling to outsource stuff and everything coming back exactly the way you imagine it.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, let's move on a bit to talk about the actual game from a gameplay mechanic perspective. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it looks and feels sort of like F-Zero with some extra mechanics. You have the spinning attack that's derived from F-Zero, I would guess.
X, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So I have the spinning attack. I have a side dash. I have lasers, charged lasers. I have somersaulting. So yeah, you can see some of these things kind of come from F-Zero and Star Fox. But I knew that, like, to be genuine, like, I couldn't, like, what's the point of making a game if you can just go play the original and, you know, it's just as fun, right? So one of the big kind of drivers for me in making this was like, okay, F-Zero and Star Fox, yes, that's a good start, but I want it to be multiplayer, because the original F-Zero was not multiplayer, and that was one of my least favorite things about the game. So local multiplayer was really important from the start, so I wanted to add that, but then I also wanted to add a couple of like my own flares to it. So that's where I got the capsule system, which is where basically all of your attacks use ammo, and the ammo are these power capsules that are, you know, placed around the track. And so if you want to do damage, you have to go out of your way to collect them sometimes. And so I think that kind of deepens the game a little bit, adds another, because you already have the boosting at the cost of your health, so that's a risk and reward. But so the capsules is also a risk and reward, because the capsules themselves, if you as you pick them up, each one you have increases your max speed, and so if you want to go as fast as possible, you collect 10 capsules and you never use them. But if you need to defend against an attack, you use a spin attack that uses a capsule. Or if you want to attack somebody to destroy them to get all of your health back, which when you destroy a character, a vehicle, then you get all of your health back. Then you need to use a capsule or multiple capsules to do that. So it's just kind of putting this system in to kind of deepen everything and have things play with each other a little more. So those are the main like inspirations from game mechanics point of view.
Yeah, so resource management, strategic thinking throughout the race. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned before that you're more into fantasy and sci-fi racing and this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with all these realistic racing games, but I guess you couldn't make a realistic car game and have a capsule system in that game.
No,
so I see that.
I don't think you could.
No. And having played the demo, I can feel that the game, the ships, they go off quite fast from the starting line. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel the game was all that aimed towards a casual audience. Would you say your game is leaning a bit more towards, I don't want to say hardcore players, but players who are willing to put in the time to perfect their laps and so on?
Yeah, I would say so. I kind of did make a decision early on that I was going to kind of target the more hardcore players. Although, it's such a hot button issue topic in game dev of like, do you have difficulty settings, and like, do you want to make your game accessible to all players rather than just one specific audience? And I think like my take on that is that I think that your game needs to have an identity. So whether or not you have difficulty settings or only want hardcore players or whatever, you just have to do what you want your game to do and take that stance. For Star Racer, I definitely, for the main modes, I do want a more kind of hardcore player, or someone who, like you said, will put in the time to understand and get better at the game. Because I do feel that, like, going back to F-Zero, like, I hadn't, at one point played it for like 15 years, and then when I picked it up again, I was really bad at it, but it was still fun. So I put in like several hours a day sometimes, practicing and getting better at it, and getting better at beating the CPUs and stuff until I could, get to master mode or whatever. And that was super fun for me. I loved that process. So that's kind of what I want my game to feel like. And so what I'm trying to do is make it to where it's difficult, yes, but not so punishing and not so daunting that most people can't play it. There's definitely going to be a drop off, like especially people who are more casual, or who just don't like racing games, like obviously, probably aren't going to be as interested in this, and I think that's okay. I mean, there are plenty of games that they will enjoy. I don't want them to spend time doing something they're not going to enjoy. So, but I think that the difficulty is going to be a draw for a lot of people. That being said, another thing that I am aware of is an issue of accessibility, which I think is it's related, but kind of a different issue from the difficulty modes. So we are going to have features, or I want to have features. I can't make any promises because, development is hard, but
sure.
we are going. I'm planning to have some accessibility features that I think will make it easier for more people to enjoy. For instance, auto steering or auto acceleration. Or I'm even looking at maybe having, seeing if I can implement like a one-handed mode, which I think would be good. Again, I can't promise everything, and I don't know when they're going to happen, but these are things that are kind of on my radar. So I want people to be able to play the game. So like, because like one thing I've learned is that like, disabilities are a big problem, and it's not even people with permanent disabilities. Like, they're temporary disabilities that people go through that prevent them from playing the games that they love. Like, what if you break your arm and you can't play with both hands? I actually had my cousin, I was showing him the game, and he had just injured his arm, his hand, and it was in a sling, and so he couldn't play it. He had to use one hand, and it was a struggle for him. And I was like, dang, like, this sucks. Like, and he's gonna heal and he'll be able to play the game eventually, but like, he wants to play the game now. So I want to be able to do things like that. And then the other thing is that there are opportunities, especially in this style of game, I think, since it's not as narrative focused, to make game modes for people who aren't necessarily looking for that hardcore skill-based racing. So one of the ideas I'm working on now is I want to have like a party mode where kind of like how you can have custom matches in Smash Brothers. I want a party mode where you can like just adjust all the different settings. So like adjust your vehicle speed, adjust like your collision force. So like normal is like normal races, but you can multiply it by like 10. So anytime you hit someone, they go flying off in the other direction. Or like adjust your HP, adjust your vehicle's size, like make different things like, oh, you can't touch the floor during for a certain amount of time, so you have to fly, or like do like a Simon Says, or just like all these different crazy like weird ideas. Like, I think would be fun to just like pile into this one game mode where you can turn all these things on and off, and it'll have like, I think it'll make it like a lot, give it a lot of replayability and playability for people who are just kind of looking to have a fun time with their friends and aren't necessarily interested in being the best racer, or even just like they want to do something else. Like, maybe there are people who are interested in being the best racer, but like they don't only want to do that, they want something else. So I'm trying to put something in so that a lot of people can have fun with the game.
Yes, I think that both of those ideas sound great. The sort of party mode you described here. I remember having a lot of time with Super Smash Bros. Growing up, just fiddling with the settings and turning off all items except for bombs or something like that.
Yeah.
It was made for some really, really crazy games. And I think what you mentioned about accessibility is super important. I think it's great that you're thinking about those aspects too. All right, Brennan, I just want to ask a couple of questions about the early access version. Is coming March 8th, correct?
Correct.
And how can people expect the game to evolve over the course of the early access period?
Yeah, so what we're planning is we want to release a functional version of most of the game modes. It's probably not going to have all the game modes for early access, but we're definitely going to have, Grand Prix, versus race, death race, time trials, and the course editor. Those are all going to be in early access. And then the question is, like, how many vehicles are we going to release at the start of early access? I think we're going to have about half of the vehicles ready in the game by then. And then throughout early access, I don't know the cadence, but we're going to drop like new courses and new vehicles and characters every once in a while. It just depends on how long it takes to finish the art for the vehicle, get music for the courses, and actually make the courses, and then tuning the vehicle. When the game launches, there'll probably be half, maybe fewer, maybe more. I don't know yet, but generally most of the vehicles are going to be locked until you meet the unlock condition.
Okay.
And like for instance, in the Next Fest demo, there is a fifth vehicle actually in the game that is locked until you win first place in a race with all four of the first vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah, so once you do that, which is actually pretty hard now, because the AI, it actually used to be a lot worse than it is now. The new AI, which is actually pretty difficult, is a completely new system that I wrote like a week ago. So so I was like, this is so much, because it used to be way too easy. It used to be like you didn't even have to try and you would win first place, because the other vehicles, they would drive off the road and kill themselves and swerve back and forth is messy. So I rewrote it to be where they're actually competent, and it's actually difficult to beat them. So yeah, so beating them in first place on any track with all four vehicles gets the fifth one, which the fifth one is actually a collaboration. It's a character from a comic book called Max Axel and the Wild Circuit. And the creator, they backed the Kickstarter, and we started talking. They're like, hey, I wrote this comic that's inspired by a lot of the same things that Star Racer was, and I just thought you would think it was cool. So he sent that to me, and I thought it was awesome, and I loved some of the characters in it so much. I was like, hey, can we put these in the game? I think that would be really awesome. He's like, okay. So that's the Chameleon Twins in their Chameleon car that you can unlock. But yeah, so there'll be a bunch of unlock conditions for all the vehicles, and so some of the vehicles are from the Kickstarter, people backed to be able to create a vehicle, and so I'm working with those backers to figure out what they want the unlock conditions of their car to be. Like maybe it's you have to destroy a certain number of vehicles, or race a certain number of times, or complete some other achievement. So there's definitely going to be things for people to do other than just race to be first place to try and unlock these different vehicles.
Yeah, that sounds great. Unlocking vehicles is a big part of racing games in general.
Yeah.
So that sounds like a great idea. Where would people go if they wanted to find out more about Star Racer or play the demo? Where will they find this about the game?
All the information about it is on Steam. So if you just search for Star Racer on Steam, I'll also give you a link if you want to put that somewhere. Sure. The Steam page, the wish lists are the best thing that people can do for the game to support it right now, especially with Next Fest coming up. Also, download the demo. It's free. It's, I think, fun. There's, ton to do, especially with the course editor, and you can make your own courses and race against the CPU on your courses, which makes it super fun. So yeah, just make as many courses you want, post videos about it, share it with us. Like, we'll be happy to retweet stuff and share all the user creations. And so the Steam page, and that's really the best place. Oh, and then we have a Discord channel if anyone wants to, or server, if anyone wants to join and talk about what they're doing there, or ask me questions. Yeah, I'm pretty active in the server, and I think it's a pretty good size. We have almost 200 members so far.
And I will put links to everything that Brennan just mentioned in the video description, so just click there and you'll find everything there.
Yay.
And I encourage people to wishlist the game and download the free demo. The Star Racer is a really fun game. You should really try it out.
Well, thank you so much.
And that was all the questions I had. Brennan, thank you so much for taking your time to visit the channel for this interview.
Yeah, thank you so much for reaching out, and I'm happy to talk and just talk about the game and everything. This is super fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I wish you all the best with the future development of Star Racer.
Thank you.
And that will be it for this video. Thank you everybody for watching. I'm Eric from AD Racing Central, and I'll see you in the next video.
Bye.